Ever wondered who ran the show in medieval towns? Did you know that your local baker could once have been part of a powerful economic cartel? What if I told you that medieval craftsmen created organizations so effective that they dominated European commerce for centuries? Number 5. The secret club that ruled medieval cities. Did you know that joining a medieval trade guild was harder than getting into an Ivy League school? Back in the day, if you wanted to be a blacksmith, a baker, or a candlestick maker, you couldn't just hang up a sign and start doing business. That's because medieval craftsmen formed exclusive organizations called guilds that literally controlled who could make and sell what. These weren't just friendly social clubs, they were serious economic powerhouses that dominated towns and cities across Europe. Picture this, it's 1320 in Florence, Italy. You want to weave and sell some fabric, but guess what? The Wool Guild controls everything about the textile trade. They decide who can work with wool, how it should be made, what quality it needs to be, and even what price it can be sold for. Try to open your own little weaving operation without their blessing. Good luck. They'd shut you down faster than you can say monopoly. These guilds existed for practically every craft imaginable. Goldsmiths, leatherworkers, bakers, brewers, carpenters, they all had their own exclusive clubs. Each guild jealously guarded its mystery, that's what they called their craft's specialized knowledge and techniques. This wasn't just about protecting trade secrets, it was about controlling the market completely. The guilds weren't playing around. They had real power, often holding positions in city governments. In many medieval towns, the guild masters were the government. They made laws, collected taxes, and even maintained militia forces. When the guild masters spoke, everyone listened because they controlled not just the economy but often the political system too. Number 4. From apprentice to master, the medieval career ladder. Ever spend 7 years making coffee and sweeping floors just to learn a job? That's basically what medieval apprentices did. The guild system created what might be the most structured career path in history, and it started with children as young as 7 years old. Here's how it worked. First, you became an apprentice. Your parents would sign a contract with a master craftsman, essentially giving you away for 7 to 10 years. You'd live in the master's house, eat at his table, and work in his workshop. In return, he'd teach you the basics of the craft. And no, you didn't get paid. Your compensation was food, lodging, and knowledge. The apprentice's life wasn't glamorous. You were basically the medieval equivalent of an unpaid intern, doing all the grunt work and slowly learning the trade. After your apprenticeship, assuming you survived it, you'd become a journeyman. Now you could finally earn wages. As a journeyman, you'd often travel between towns. That's where the journey part comes from, working for different masters to broaden your skills. Think of it as the medieval gap year, except it lasted much longer and involved a lot more labor. The final step, becoming a master, this wasn't easy. You had to create a masterpiece, an example of your craft so perfect that the existing guild masters would accept you into their ranks. For a furniture maker, this might be an intricately carved cabinet. For a goldsmith, perhaps a perfectly crafted chalice. Only then could you open your own workshop, hire your own apprentices, and vote in guild matters. This system wasn't just about training new craftsmen. It controlled the number of people who could practice each trade, limiting competition. Masters made sure not just anyone could join their exclusive club. In many guilds, you also needed to be a male of legitimate birth from a respectable family, and sometimes even related to existing guild members. Talk about exclusive. Number 3. Quality control and medieval brand protection. Imagine buying a loaf of bread and finding it's half the size it should be. Or purchasing gold jewelry that turns out to be mostly copper. Today we have consumer protection laws, but medieval folks had something else: guild quality standards that were enforced with iron fists. Guilds were obsessed with quality control. They set strict standards for everything: the materials used, the production methods, even the exact dimensions of products. A baker in 14th century London couldn't just decide to make smaller loaves when grain prices rose. The Bakers' Guild set the exact weight and price of bread, and city officials regularly checked to make sure no one was cheating customers. The penalties for selling substandard goods could be brutal. In some cities, bakers caught selling underweight bread might be paraded through town in a cart, pelted with their own bad products. Butchers selling bad meat could be put in a pillory, with the rotten meat hung around their necks. One medieval account tells of a wine merchant caught watering down his product who was forced to drink a large quantity of his own watered wine until he became ill. But this wasn't just about protecting consumers. It was about protecting the guild's reputation. In an era before brands as we know them, a city's reputation for quality goods was everything. London cloth or Toledo steel were medieval brand names that commanded premium prices. If one craftsman sold poor quality items, it reflected badly on all guild members in that city. Guilds also pioneered what we now call trademarks. Guild members marked their products with special symbols, early logos that showed which master craftsman had made an item. These marks became guarantees of quality. A blacksmith's personal mark on a sword told you it wouldn't break in battle, that pottery stamp. It meant your jug wouldn't leak. Counterfeiting these marks was a serious offense, sometimes punishable by having your hand cut off. Medieval brand protection didn't mess around. Number 2, economic warfare and guild power politics. Did you know medieval guilds engaged in what amounted to economic warfare? These weren't just local organizations of craftsmen, they were powerful economic forces that could make or break entire cities. Guilds didn't just control who could practice a craft, they controlled entire supply chains. The Wool Weavers' Guild might control everything from the purchase of raw wool to the sale of finished cloth. They could boycott suppliers who didn't meet their terms, creating medieval versions of economic sanctions. If a particular town or merchant displeased a powerful guild, that guild might simply refuse to do business there, devastating the local economy. The real power plays happened between cities. Craft guilds in powerful trading centers like Venice, Florence, or the German Hanseatic League cities wielded enormous influence. They could negotiate special trading privileges, tax exemptions, and even territorial rights. When the Venetian Glassmakers Guild threatened to move their operations to a competing city, they extracted major concessions from the government because Venice couldn't afford to lose their expertise. Guild politics got even more intense within cities. Different guilds competed for power, with greater guilds like goldsmiths or merchants often dominating lesser guilds like bakers or tanners. In Florence, 7 major guilds effectively ran the city government for centuries. In London, livery companies, another name for guilds, elected city officials and controlled who could become a citizen. Some guilds became so powerful they essentially functioned as states within states. The Calamala Guild of Cloth Merchants in Florence maintained its own courts, collected its own taxes, and even conducted its own foreign policy. They had agents throughout Europe and as far away as Constantinople and North Africa. Guild members weren't above using force to maintain their monopolies. Historical records show numerous instances of unauthorized craftsmen having their tools destroyed or workshops burned. In 1293, the Parisian Guild of Water Carriers physically attacked anyone trying to distribute water without guild membership. In extreme cases, non-guild workers might be assaulted or even killed as a warning to others who might try to operate outside the system. Number 1, the hidden social system behind the guilds. Ever wonder what held medieval society together before welfare and insurance? Would you believe it was the same organizations that controlled the economy? Guilds weren't just economic entities, they were complete social systems. They provided what we'd now call a social safety net for their members long before government programs existed. If a master craftsman died, the guild would look after his widow and children. If a guild member fell ill, others would support his family. Some guilds maintained hospitals for sick members or homes for elderly craftsmen who could no longer work. Behind the economic control was a complex social organization. Guilds were brotherhoods and occasionally sisterhoods, as some trades did allow women. Members swore oaths to support each other, attend each other's weddings and funerals, and defend the guild's honor. They shared meals together at guild halls, celebrated religious festivals as a group, and often worshipped together at the same church. Most guilds had their own patron saints. The goldsmiths claimed Saint Eligius, carpenters had Saint Joseph, and bakers adopted Saint Honorius. They commissioned elaborate artwork depicting these saints for their guild halls and churches. Many of the stained glass windows that survive in medieval churches were paid for by craft guilds, showing guild members proudly practicing their trades under the watchful eyes of their patron saints. Guilds were also major charitable organizations. They maintained funds to help poor people in their cities, supported local churches, and sponsored public works like bridges and wells. In York, England, craft guilds performed elaborate religious plays on Corpus Christi Day, with each guild responsible for a different biblical scene. These weren't just religious obligations, they were public relations efforts that demonstrated the guild's wealth and civic commitment. For medieval people, guilds provided identity and status. Your craft wasn't just your job, it was who you were. Guild membership gave you a place in society, a voice in local affairs, and security in an uncertain world. Guild members wore special clothing on official occasions, marched in city processions under their guild banners, and were buried with honor by their fellow craftsmen. Did medieval guilds create the first comprehensive social security system centuries before governments thought to do so? What would our modern workplace look like if we still organized our professions with the same level of brotherhood and mutual support? Could the guild system have evolved into something different if industrialization hadn't rendered it obsolete? The medieval guild system may have disappeared, but doesn't its legacy of quality standards, professional identity, and economic power still influence how we work today?